Oh, holy night when Clay is on the podcast. Welcome to an episode of the Creative Spell Podcast. My name is Justin. I am here with Cleandré Foster, Clay Foster. What else do people call you?
Everything that's not my name.
Like what?
For Cleandré.
Oh, yeah, that's what Siri calls you.
Clarence.
Siri has never called you that.
No.
I've never called
But I
you
got
that
Clarence like more often than you would think.
Were they dyslexic?
I don't know.
Anyway.
But I'm very confused.
We welcome you to the Creators World Podcast. My name is Justin. This is Clay, not Clarence. And the Creators World Podcast is for creatives, Christian creatives, who want to be refueled, revitalized, and refreshed to continue on to their God-given purposes. And today, I've got a very special guest, my brother, and we're going to be talking about his single, about music, and whatever else comes on, because this is over 5 or 10 or some sort of years of friendship, and who knows what's going to come out. So,
wow.
yeah. So we're talking about the single eventually. I feel like let's talk about you. Tell me a time when you wanted to quit music.
Oh man,
I'm just gonna start hot and heavy.
Yeah, real hot and heavy. There have been several times. I'll start with the most recent. Most recent was probably around this time last year. I was really kind of trying to figure out where the Lord was calling me to go. I wasn't doing anything musically. I had a lot of people reach out to me from the past, wanting me to, come back. It's like, hey, Clay, are you still playing? This, that, and the third. Man, really miss you out here. And I was like, dude, I miss being out there, but I don't feel the release to go. So I was about to sell everything.
Oh.
Drums, equipment.
For those who don't know, that's expensive.
Yeah,
you probably
it would have been a nice chunk of change. But yeah, I was ready to give it up. But thankfully, through prayer, a loving wife, great support.
Who's in our studio audience right now?
Yes, shout out to Allie, who's saved us multiple times today.
If we had more than 2 cameras, we would show her, but
yeah,
we're still in our low budget production, so.
Praise the Lord for small beginnings. Hey, look, work with what you got. That's what my wife
that
also
is
says.
true. So
work
tell us how you work
got.
with what you got.
Look, to God be the glory. This, I know we're not talking about the single just yet, but
that's fine.
Just a disclaimer. I did pretty much everything on the single by myself.
Which is amazing.
Amazing, okay, but not what I wanted to do. I am a very collaborative person, and anybody who's known me, especially from like the Future Prospect days, we had a bunch of guys, and I loved it because everybody had their own perspective. But in this season specifically, in terms of how it would mean for my family, in terms of just getting music out, because I've been sitting on music for God knows how long. Like, this single's actually been done for almost 2 years.
Oh.
Crazy enough.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. This single's been done for almost 2 years. And this year especially, the Lord was just like, if you want more, you're going to have to give out what I've given you. And that was really coming to terms with, it's not going to sound like how you want it to. It's probably going to be real janky at the front, but hey, people will latch on, people will want to invest, people will want to help you as you go on the road. You just got to make that step. And so this was a big part of making that step.
Let's be very clear. His janky is like not actually really janky. It's like good for most people. His janky is like, oh man, like, man, we hit that out the park. And he's like, that was janky. So,
yeah.
So
Amen.
With, I guess, this journey in music for you, and like there was a time where you wanted to quit, there you're learning more. What are you learning with God this season? Like, how is your relationship with God intertwined with music and your musical journey?
Oh man. So a big part of it has been like I was saying before, not sitting on what God has given me. Because a lot of the times I'll get something. There was a point I was telling Allie. There would be a point where I would get like ideas left and right, and I do the whole voice memo thing, even go to the DAW and start recording, but I would never go any further than that, simply because of my own inadequacies, and really God telling me rather, that look, I gave it to you for a reason. I gave it to you specifically for a reason. So, act on that and trust me. Really kind of letting it go out of my hands, and really, really, really trusting him and seeking him, and not having the pressure of, the result or the fruit of trusting him. He just asks us to trust him, and that's really the biggest thing, as far as my correlation between God and music. Just to trust him. There's been evidence all across the Bible.
Sorry, there are other people in the studio audience. His 3 kids, and noise happened upstairs, but it is what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, there's evidence all across the Bible of people having to trust God with not seeing where they're going to go, or not seeing the evidence or the fruit of what will happen, when trusting God. And so that has been super encouraging, and just being able to step out. Everybody likes to quote the having the faith the size of a mustard seed, but we really understand the gravity of what that actually meant.
Not everybody.
It's literally just making that step out, and that's really kind of, for me, what has been the coalition, or the crossing of roads between my music and my faith. Sure.
Is there a particular story, like you mentioned people in the Bible, who do you relate to anybody in particular? Has a story inspired you or resonated with you recently?
Recently, oh wow, there's been quite a few. I will say, and as a precursor, I'd say Daniel.
Oh, imagine that.
Be on the lookout for that. But Daniel specifically, in terms of the decree that he had from his leader to not pray to anybody, and it's him still going openly to pray to his God, and trusting that God will deliver him out of the lion's den. I can only imagine his thought process when he first heard the decree. Because actually, shout out to my pastors, Pastor Matisha and Pastor Saldentu. They had a lesson in regards to Daniel and that whole story. And Daniel, what they said was that Daniel was there throughout the whole talking of this decree happening. So it's not like he was surprised with it. He was in there as far as the talks, as far as the signings, if you will. And now the fact that is now being carried out against him, and him kind of reconciling with that and understanding that God will protect me no matter what, has really been kind of a story that I've been clinching to, for sure.
Yeah, Daniel was wild. He's not a chill boy, as the kids say, because I think the outright defiance of the king but reliance on God was something that anybody needs to know, but especially people who are creatives, and especially I want to say musicians, because I think for those of anybody who's in the music industry or even familiar with the music industry, we know the music industry is very wicked on all fronts, even the gospel industry, and one day we'll talk about that too maybe, but today not so much. But how do you see your music and your journey and testimony being a light to other musicians?
So those of you who don't know my testimony, it's something I've been really reluctant and scared to share. But just to kind of truncate it, a couple years ago, probably I'll say 7 because that's as long as me and Allie have been married. 7 years ago, I felt and was also talked to about the idea of stopping playing secular music altogether. Um, those that know me, playing was a big part of my life and is still a big part of my life. Um, and that really challenged me to the point where there are people who would call me, and there was an influx, especially when I made the decision not to play secular music anymore. There was an influx of people calling me to play.
Always will be.
And, you know, having like not being able to have the confidence to explain why, or just like not answering the phone altogether, or be like, nah, I'm not about it. And I had I was in prayer, and there was a song that came up, which songs often do come up when I'm in prayer and devotion to God. Um, the old Andre Crouch song, "We Are Not Ashamed," and
Wow.
yeah,
The throwback.
yeah, and like honestly, I was just like, wow, you sing that great song, but do you really understand the gravity of what that song is really saying? So there came a point where I had to say to people, hey, I'm not doing that right now. And the kind of backlash that I had initially, um, it hurt, honestly, because from their perspective, it seemed like I was just brushing them off.
Mm-hmm.
And I was becoming what seemed to be not dependable, which anybody who knows me, I'll do anything for anybody. Um, if I'm able, if I could be there, you ask me to be there, I'm going to be there. But at that time, that's something I really had to stand foot on and really bear down on, which was hard. It was super hard, and I still stand on that today. Is it difficult? Yes, 100%. But even in sharing this right now, and showing people that it is possible, now don't get me wrong, like, it is very hard because the church doesn't appreciate musicians in the way that they should, unfortunately, which causes a lot of people
By
to...
church, the global church.
The global church,
We don't
yes.
want any like.
No, yeah.
I just,
Sorry.
just in my mind, I'm like,
Yeah,
I
thank
don't
you
want
for
any
thank
somebody
you for
taking it back
clarifying.
and being like, Clay said that. Yeah.
No, thank
Okay,
you for
yeah.
clarifying. It's
Yeah.
not directed at anybody. The global
We're
church.
not canceling anybody.
Please no. Please
But go
no.
ahead.
But as just a generality, the church at large doesn't support musicians in the way that they should.
So let me stop you there because I feel like, one, I was going to bring you, your brother, your cousin, talk about this another day. But since we're here now, why? So I think a lot of times people, you hear musicians, you hear singers, you hear creatives, but we're talking about musicians. You hear musicians primarily say like the church doesn't support them. What does that support look like? And I know it's different for every musician. Like I'm not saying all musicians feel the same, but from your standpoint, what would that support look like? Or aim to look like, because you can't always hit it. You always can't always get the mark. But like, what does it look like?
The aim should be the spirit man and the actual human first, and that's where I think the initial breakdown is. That's where the root is, because a lot of times you find somebody talented. It's like, hey, you should use your talents for the Lord. Great, I'm getting paid this. Awesome. You don't see that person ever again.
Nope.
You're just there Sunday after Sunday after Sunday. And then you start to wonder, hey, do these guys even care about me? And then, something comes up and there's this discrepancy in money for whatever reason. And then those feelings are now exaggerated because of something that wasn't addressed at the root. Hey, who are you?
Yeah.
How can I help you? How can I lead you to Christ?
Mm-hmm.
That before, hey, how much do you want to get paid a Sunday? Hey, do you want to raise? Hey, can you do this conference, that, or the third? So that would be the aim first, before you even think of touching about, money or anything like that. The human and the spirit man, for sure.
So, what about? So, I think, especially talking about the spirit man, from a musician standpoint, this might ruffle some feathers. This might be it. Okay. No, another day. So,
All right.
let's get past that. This is a happy episode. But I do think that does lead into the conversation fully of like, whatever you're doing for God, make sure you know God most importantly. Like, and I think that, like, we can get to the nitty gritty of the other stuff maybe another day. But like, I think a lot of times we do things for God without knowing God and without being held accountable for knowing God.
For sure.
So like,
yeah.
Let's talk about like your devotion, if you will. Like, not to put you on the spot from that, but like,
no, not at all.
what are like maybe passages that you read often, or like what does your devotion as a musician look like? And is that different than your devotion as just a child of God, if that makes sense? Like, is there a difference that you do when you're preparing for a studio session or an event or something like that versus just like your everyday devotion with God? Or are they the same?
I would say they're the same for right now. I've actually been really excited about the way my devotions have been going as of late. So a lot of the Christian walk that we don't like to talk about is that sacrifice is involved. So I made the challenge to myself to wake up an hour earlier than I would normally do.
Which is what time of the morning? Tell the people.
Right.
I couldn't. I just letting you know it's not going to be me. But go ahead and tell them what time you get up in the morning.
Right now, I am waking up at around 5 o'clock, 4:45, 5 o'clock, in an effort to devote soul time to getting to know who God is. Not for asking for stuff. Getting to know who God is. And that has been absolutely wonderful, in the fact that now I'm starting to understand, even past hurts that I've kind of gone through in regards to family, church, friendships, things that I never understood. I'm starting to now realize like the purpose of them. I'm starting to understand that God really does love me. And, that sounds like a super cliche, but, understanding that works wonders for you because it changes how you treat people. Mm-hmm. If you understand God's love for you, that in turn changes your love for yourself. When you change your love for yourself, it changes your love for other people. And that is what makes other people come to God. That is your light. That is your witness. And so,
how did you realize God loved you?
Understanding what he did. I realize, like, as a Christian community, we don't understand fully what God really did for us. God had a son. And in having a son, I would never...
What was his name?
Jesus.
Okay.
Let's make that abundantly clear. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And I realize in having a son, the thought process in giving up my son for somebody else to take on something that somebody else did wrong is a mind-boggling concept. So the fact that God freely did this.
Yeah, because I just paused for a second. Because I just thought, like, he has a son named Andre. And my mind was like
that's my namesake.
I couldn't even imagine you, like, what? Like, when you
like,
think
all
about
right,
it
Andre,
in a natural sense, like, okay, Andre, you go pay for Marley's sins.
Literally.
Like,
not even going too far out. Like, go pay for mine. Like, that's crazy. That is crazy.
While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
Yeah.
Romans 5:8. Or
Knowing
8, 5 and 8. 5 and 8. Sorry.
knowing all the wrong things that I will do, I have done. It's mind-boggling to think, and then the only reasonable response is, "Wow, thank you for your love." And when I finally started, I won't even say I understand it. When I finally started to understand that, it changed my whole perspective. Changed my attitude with my wife, changed my attitude with my children, how I operate in the church. And look, hey, be with your church. Be in community. I don't know why that popped up, but thank you, Holy Spirit. Be with community. Be with your church. You should know the people who you serve with. Get to know them.
Also assumes that they serve, but that's a different story anyway. You're nicer than I am.
Well, look, service is
because you're taking a big leap there.
Service is
Harvest
everywhere.
is plenty, but the laborers a few. But I don't know.
Service is everywhere in the church. It doesn't have to be on the stage for it to be deemed as service.
That's very true. Yes.
Okay? So get to know the people you serve with.
And serve.
And serve. Please do that. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
So you mentioned community. So this is a slightly hard pivot.
Yeah.
I talk about friendship. Like you and me. We're friends.
Thank God.
But there was a point where we weren't friends. And I don't think people know that. And that's totally okay because I don't expect people to know all of that.
That was a scary time.
That was an interesting time.
That was a scary time.
But here we are, many years later, still friends.
Thank you.
In my opinion, better friends than we were before.
Yeah.
Healthier friends than we were before.
Yeah.
But what is it like working with a friend? Because honestly, like I think I've talked about this on the internet before, but like I truly do credit you with like me starting this whole like event thing and like doing things, because for those who don't know or may not have heard the story, Clay and I were the best of friends in high school / college, early college. We took a little break. But before that, he had this vision of the youth movement, which, wow, like throwback. And he had music that he wanted to put out. And I just remember him saying, like, he was like, I just don't know how to do it. And me and another friend of ours were like, we're going to help you do it. Well, long story short, the other friend didn't help out. Well, that's not true. He was there the day of. But I was supposed to just be the photographer. And if you ever listen to this, you know who I'm talking about. And I tell you this often. But I was like, well, I'll step up and, make it happen. And I remember calling Clay's dad, who is a sound engineer, who had a connection at the church.
Amazing.
And literally, after one conversation, I expected him to say no. Clay's dad, Mr. Rogers, super nice. But I just expected him to say no. And he said yes. And I said, oh, wow, Clay, we have a date. And then it was just on. Like, the whole concert got planned. There are definitely things I would have done differently.
It was an awesome event for what it was.
Truly, I still don't know how that happened.
It was pretty good.
We didn't pay anybody.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
For all the people who served that day. Thank you.
Lord.
Thank you dearly.
I pray you were blessed.
My mom made a banner from scratch for us.
Wow. It was like, a whole thing.
I just remember saying, man, it's going to be a blank wall. And I don't like that. And she just like took a sheet and decorated the youth movement logo.
She did wonders.
I paid for the shirts at first, and then Mike Davis came behind me and paid for the shirts. So, which was great because my bank account was struggling back then. I didn't know.
Everybody was. I was fresh out of high school.
Right? Yeah. You had just graduated. That was Woo. Your dad thankfully donated his time.
Yeah.
And the time of the staff to work with him.
Gosh.
So that was like the first thing, and that's when I realized like I really love doing it. So one. Publicly, I appreciate you. I'll probably say this again tonight. Well, it won't be tonight when you guys hear this, but anyway, I do appreciate you for like trusting, because I think like allowing someone to be trusted with your vision is something that is underrated for things. So one, I thank you for trusting me all those years, and then we had like a couple gigs after that. It was all very weird and random because like who was trusting us to do that? But at that time, looking back at it, we should not have done it.
Not any of it.
But it happened, and I think it launched both of us. You went to college at VCU. I was at UVA at that time.
Yeah.
And we were still hanging out a lot. And then something happened and we were not friends. Yeah, it was bad.
Lord Jesus.
But coming back from that, and for context, it was about like a year gap, year and a half, maybe 2.
It was 2 years. It was at least 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. Because it was before
The
I
person
met.
in the studio audience doesn't agree that it was 2 years.
No, it was before I met Allie.
It could have been before.
It was.
We went on double date.
I know, but the initial happened before all of that.
What was the initial? There was 2.
We could talk about that offline.
In my mind, it happened after that. So maybe it wasn't that big of a.
Yeah.
Maybe it was. Anyway, we'll get to that later. But there was a point. Yes.
Yeah. You remember it now?
No, but I remember we had the double date. It was right after your birthday, and then 3 weeks later is when all hell broke loose.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the first thing. But anyway, so the point of that is not to dwell on any of that, because thankfully it was like a true reconciliation, and I have no bad blood whatsoever. I'm
God's
happy.
grace.
But
Oh my goodness.
I think even with that, like, and I don't know why, I feel like friendships is a hard thing and something that's talked about, but not talked about. Friendships being hard is talked about a lot, but friendships being fixed is not something that's talked about. So
Yeah, for sure.
in that time, and the reason I'm going to this is like, obviously we work together all the time now, and I couldn't imagine doing any of this stuff without you. Like, I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, had I let that disagreement last for life, like, what would we both be missing out on in each other's lives and things of that, and the fruit that's come from it. But like, how did you prepare your heart for reconciliation? Because I feel like I was mean, and very distant and cold, as I know I can often be. So how did you warm back up?
Oh Lord. So again, shout out to my pastors. One thing my pastor, who's also my father, is super big on is integrity. And first off, it was admitting that you done wrong. So the acknowledgement of, hey, what I did was wrong. And coming to you and saying sorry, which is a lot like salvation. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. Acknowledging that I did wrong, asking for your forgiveness because I could have stopped it. I done wrong. And expected you to be just okay with, hey, I did wrong. Which is not right by any means. But asking for your forgiveness and really just being able to come to terms with, if he didn't forgive me, Lord, I did the right thing. I did the right thing in acknowledging. I did the right thing in trying to fix the relationship. And the great thing about friendships, and as far as like working together, one, it brings the best out of you, but it also exposes the worst things about you. Friendships are a lot like marriages, and in my marriage, my wife, you know, boosts the best thing about me, but she'll also tell me, hey, this is what's hurting me. Like, you need to fix this so we can move forward. And you have two choices at that point. You can either negate it and just be like, nah, that ain't me. Like, you need to get yourself together. Or you can really just take a look at yourself through the eyes of the Lord and through Scripture and, you know, really figure, hey, yeah, this is something that you need fixing. And in our relationship, that's something I really had to go about seeking the Lord and saying, hey, I messed up. Please forgive me. I want to move forward. And at that point, like, I really missed my friend. Like, Justin is like one in a million.
I just didn't want to say it. I was just mean.
One in a million friend. And like, it's funny that you say that because had I just let pride like rule in that moment, you probably wouldn't be here.
No. I might have reposted your single though, just out of history, but that would have been about it.
But yeah, it's super important to, in relationships, always do a consistent check of self-reflection. Um, and not always take all the time.
That's true.
Like in a relationship, especially our relationship, I wanted to make sure I wasn't always taking, because a lot of the time, and I think that was part of the embarrassment, I felt like I was on the receiving end a lot of times and not so much on the giving end. So I felt like you would never take me back because from my perspective, I was always on the take rather than the giving.
And I didn't want to, but speed it up because I think he's trying to make me emotional, and I'm not in that mood today. I remember the apology vividly, and I remember just putting the phone down, and then I was like, okay, cool. In my mind, I was like, no, you should be better than that, Justin. Like, you should think. And I think even, like, in relationships in general, we have to be reminded of the love that Christ has shown us, that, like, love covers a multitude of sins. Like, all these things happen. And, like, people are going to hurt you, mess up, like, all the things. But, like, I think sometimes, and especially, like, in people's friendships, like, you don't want to miss out on all that God can show you about you and the other person and what other fruit can happen. And my hair is too long. But yeah, like so I was grateful for that. So with us working together creatively now, and I think the base of that is also our friendship got together before we ever started back working together.
Yes.
Which I was grateful for, because
Yes.
it wasn't just like a, hey, come do this. Hey, can you come here type of thing. But so the friendship was solid, and then we started working together. What has been the hardest thing about working with me? You can tell everybody now. There has to be something.
So the hardest thing for me is more of a like self thing. Like, what can I do to then elevate your ideas? Because you already have great ideas. If anybody who knows Justin, he's a very, very smart man. Super smart. I, on the other hand, my wife doesn't like me saying this. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. But
Boo. Boo.
I will do my best.
Why do you feel okay? So you're
Wait,
you're
can I answer the
no,
can I answer the
no, it's my show. We'll get back to you. Why? So okay, musicians, specifically ones with the last name Foster, but most musicians don't typically feel like that they can measure up in a way. Like, it's a weird, it's like a common thing, because you're either a super cocky musician or you're like, oh, I'm just all right. Like, there's very few musicians that I actually know in real life that are like in the middle. Like, oh, I know I'm good, but there's room for improvement. But like, where do you think that comes from? Because I feel like there's a real thing, and that's for creatives in general.
Yeah.
Like, you got people either like, oh yeah, I'm the best event producer, I'm the best this, I'm the best photographer. It's like, man, I'm just happy to be alive. Like, why is there no? Why is that? Because you were truly on the humble, but like almost look down upon your gift type of thing. Because you are extremely talented. So why? Yeah. Why, Clay?
I'm working on not degrading myself, but I'll say this. I think it's because, and this is based on my perspective, I don't want to make this a generalization. From my perspective, the outward perception on what creatives can offer is really kind of one-dimensional, at least from my end. Like, you call on a creative, like, hey, I have an idea for this. Can you produce it? Mm-hmm. And then after that, you get your money, and then you're on your way. They never talk to you again. So it's just like there's only need when it's needed, rather than other, gifts and talents that are needed all the time. Like, say a bank teller. Bank teller is needed all the time. Or, a business person. Business person is needed all the time. Even now in the age of, like, IT, like, that's needed all the time. Like a creative, like, hey, I don't need a Christmas concert all the time, or hey, I don't need a band to play at my function all the time. I could get a CD type thing. So there's just, but that's the
That is how-
mindset.
yeah,
Like
people-
it's
yeah.
just like I'm not needed all the time. So it's just
Which
at
is
least my
fascinating for you to say that, because then the cocky musician would say, "I am needed all the time. Like you can't do this without
Right.
me. Like,
But
your,
I think
your
that-
concert will fail without me." So it's
Right.
like it's just interesting how.
But I think that's a microcosm of my point. It's just the opposite spectrum.
Yeah.
So it's just
Also, if you weren't that bright, you wouldn't use the word microcosm. I just want to point that out. I just
But-
just heard it. I was like, "That's a good SAT word." Like, who's just using that? But
I don't think about that.
anyway, we're actually friends. If you can't tell, I wouldn't do this with other people. But I've lost my point. There was a point there. You were telling me what was challenging, and you started to degrade yourself. That's why we had to take that
Yes.
next
Okay.
pivot.
Yeah. Answer. Figuring out how to elevate your ideas, because your ideas are actually very straightforward, and you know exactly what you want. As a creative working for somebody, the goal should always be not that it's not enough, but how can you make it better, while also taking yourself out of the way. So you have an idea, and while I want to put my best foot forward, understanding that it's not about me, but also giving the same energy as if it was my thing. That would be the hardest thing. Because you could ask me to write a song, and I write said song, but it doesn't sound like Justin. It sounds like Clay. That's a problem. Like, but at the same time, while I want it to be, hey, this sounds like Clay, I want it to be, this is Justin.
Wow.
Like, this is 100% Justin.
Never crossed my mind.
That's the biggest
really
challenge.
insightful. I'll be honest, because I think. Well, I mean, that's why I say I'm not a musician, but like that would have never. You asked me to write something, I'm gonna write whatever comes to my mind and hope that you like it. Say, no, oh darn. All right, let's try it again. What's the next thing that you want to do in life?
The next thing I want to do in life, I would love to get to a point where, and I think this is a lot of creatives' desire, just to be self-sufficient off of music and what I love. That is my next goal in life. Also understanding I can't just quit everything in order to get there. There is a process. I learned that the hard way, very young in life, thank God. And I don't want to repeat that. But
Our studio audience member doesn't know. She's in agreement.
That is my next goal in life, and just creating the best plan for my family and myself to get there, while also being in God's will. That was a very loaded answer. It's a very simple question. I apologize. But Allie and I
more
were
proof that you're smart, but okay.
Allie and I were talking about that. I mentioned my wife a lot. She's awesome. Sorry, but I had to make mention of that. Come on. I mentioned you enough. Probably everybody wants to see you now. For those who don't know,
because she's not going to be on social media. Keep
for
coming.
those who don't know,
There you
this
go.
is my lovely wife. That's Allie. Thank you, babe. Yeah, we were just talking about the idea of how we have our desires, but how does that fit into the context of God's will? Obviously, He didn't give. Well, not even that. Obviously, God doesn't give us desires for no reason. I have this desire for a reason. Trying to make it fit versus asking God to help me to align with His will first, and then have the desires come afterward. That's the challenge. So that is the number one goal right now, for sure.
Give me an unpopular opinion about gospel music.
Unpopular opinion. In modern day society, it is very underappreciated. That is my unpopular opinion. There are several amazing gospel artists that are not the main ones. Not to take away from the main
There's
ones,
only 10 spots for the Marines, it feels like.
but
And they just cycle through.
there are amazing choirs. There are amazing soloists. There are amazing musicians, indie artists that nobody knows of that is holding up the Bloodstained banner, but nobody knows about them.
Who are some of the musicians? Because I feel like musicians in general are undervalued. Like, we love musicians. We know we need them.
Mm-hmm.
We value them, but we don't put people to musicians, right? Like, we're like, oh, that record sounded really good. That song sounded really good. But, like, you're going to say, like, well, you wouldn't say Kirk sang good. That doesn't even sound right. You're going to say, like, here, she sang really good. But, like, you're like, man, the band sounded good. But, like, we will just collectively put all the musicians together. So, like, we won't say J. Drew. And that's the limit of my knowledge, too. Like, I'm going to just say, I know him, but.
Yeah.
So, like, who's a couple musicians that aren't the J. Drews or the Spanks or the people that might be known, but, like, are up and coming, if you will?
Yeah, so trying to figure out how to answer this because I could go super local because locally here in the DMV
let's do local because I think
musicians.
People say there's no talent in Virginia, even though people like Pharrell and
ton of talent.
Chris Brown might not be the best examples for this podcast, but they're super talented individuals.
There are a ton of talent.
So like who from Virginia?
Someone I greatly admire. He's probably going to be very mad that I say this. I admire him. Actually from Northern Virginia. My good friend Deshaun Gold. He is an amazing producer and musician. We went to school together. Just to put his name out there, you know, as somebody you could look to get great content from and music from. I hope here in the near future because he has it. Let's see, who else? I'd say even locally, my good friend and mentor, a lot of people probably know him, but Richard Davis, another great force in the gospel music industry, I think, from this area. Who else? There's so many. I don't like naming names because I feel like I'm gonna get somebody.
So, hey, we'll put them in the show notes if he gets us more. What about up and coming gospel singers or people that like they don't even have to be local, but like who are some people?
I think God that like people are starting to notice her now, but Madison Ryan Ward, I love listening to her. You mentioned Kirk, but his son Keziah Franklin.
Oh yeah, no, he's a beast.
I love his approach to music.
He's a beast.
Period. He's a top favorite right now. Let's see who else. Let's go choirs. People know about. I've been listening to his most recent record right now, Sam Roberts. Sam Roberts is amazing. I believe from the DMV area too, if I'm not mistaken.
DC. Yeah.
Super
We worked
dope.
together before. He's really
cool. Again, there's so many. I feel like I'm gonna make a mistake not mentioning somebody. But yeah, there's a ton. And I would strongly suggest, and there's a bunch of ways to do it, but do your research. Find different people. Find somebody you grab onto or gravitate towards, and support their music. That's the best thing you could do.
And what would be the next instrument that you play to learn? There are no questions on this show. Just whatever comes to my mind. So
that's fine. I've always been a fan of brass instruments, so it'd probably be a brass instrument first. Probably flugelhorn because I love
the what?
The flugelhorn.
Okay.
Don't laugh, but some of the greatest records are
you
what
didn't
they
want to
are.
say trumpet,
No.
sax,
Specifically,
flugelhorn.
It is derived from the trumpet, yes, but the flugelhorn specifically is a beautiful instrument when played correctly.
Who plays it?
A lot of people.
Like an Irishman?
No, anybody.
Black people play this?
Yes, absolutely.
Where have I heard this before?
Where
Would I have heard
Future Prospect record?
Who played that?
Jackson did. Shout out to Jackson Schultz.
That's what that was.
Yes.
You know what? I thought that was a French horn.
No, that was the flugelhorn. Most beautiful thing I've ever heard, man.
Let's talk about your single. Just because my brain is
oh my gosh,
really processing this all like, okay. So,
oh my gosh,
you have a song out for Christmas.
Where did this go?
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm gonna do. You have a song out right now for Christmas. You have a Christmas single called "The First Noel." What is a Noel? What is that? And why did you pick this song out of all the Christmas songs?
So one, it's a great song. One of my favorites when it comes to Christmas. It's basically reiterating the story of Christ. And if you look at all of the verses, it literally goes from birth pretty much to crucifixion. The last verse talks about how, he was ultimately born to be the ultimate sacrifice. And give us the ability to come back to him. And that one, not a lot of people have done. So
nobody knows what a Noel is. Like, is there a second Noel?
that is the question. Maybe that's the next Christmas song. The
second Noel, because
but
first Noel, cool. Okay.
But yeah, it's just the story of Jesus Christ from birth and the hard and turmoil of that to Jesus dying.
And what was the hardest? So you said you did it by yourself primarily. So I imagine that was probably the most challenging thing. What would be the next most challenging thing of producing this album, getting it out there?
Getting it past my ear. As I said, I sat on this for almost 2 years. There was a lot of ear fatigue. I got tired of listening to this.
I'm sure.
Also, wanting a different perspective on it. Am I happy with what I put out? Debate is on that. I like it. Okay. I just know it can be better. But
what would be better? Is it the mixing? Is it the what would you?
Yeah.
So exercise. I'm gonna put the link in the notes so you listen to it, stream it.
Please
run
do.
Streams up.
Please do.
He got 3 kids.
I can say that now.
You do, yeah. Run them numbers up. He got 3 kids. They gotta go to college one day.
Praise him.
I'll say it. They might have another one. Who knows? You never know.
No, that's not going to happen. That's not.
If y'all don't get them to enough streams, maybe they'll have another kid. I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't even make sense. But what would you want to improve upon it? Because I think a good exercise for people is to hear a product and then listen to the artist's perspective.
Yeah.
And then even be like, oh, I can kind of see what he's saying, or be like, man, he's tripping. Like, this is perfect. So what would you want to improve?
One, the mixing of it all. It's funny. I was talking to one of my other mentors
Did you
about
bring
it
your vocals
yesterday.
Up?
No.
I asked all the hard questions.
But again, that goes along with having another perspective, because somebody else would have said, "Hey, you probably need to bring that up." To me,
funny story. He sent the thing in a group chat with his brother and his cousin and me, and he was like, "What do y'all think?" I was not going to say a thing because I was like, I just wanted to put it out because I know it's going to be good. And he's a foster, so nothing's ever perfect for them, and that's just a thing. Not to discredit your perspective, but sometimes, sheesh. But but I was like, wow, that his vocals in the beginning are very low. But then Mario goes, if you don't turn them vocals up, and I was like, hey, I didn't have to say it. He still didn't turn them up though. But
I did. That's the thing. I did
by a hair, a fraction of a decibel.
It was significant to me.
Okay, so next time we need a council.
Yes.
Because I was like, okay, and it sounds good. I will say you sounded good. My favorite song from yours is still "It Is Well," even though.
You know what?
I'm
going to do
release
it.
that.
I'm going to redo it and re-release it.
Will you do it at my funeral?
Can we not talk about that?
I have been planning my funeral with Clay since we became friends. And then I always say he's going to get married and leave me in a nursing home, and I'm going to choke on Jell-O and die. So I need him
Well, that has not happened so far.
Well, you have gotten married.
I have gotten married,
You
but I
did
haven't
move.
leave you.
2 years. 2 years. God. Now all we need is the Jell-O. Anyway, so go stream The First Noel by Cleandré Foster. You can find him on Instagram.
Oh, Lord.
Get back to some seriousness. Instagram at Cleandré. It is on the screen now. And you can also download his music at all places where they sell music and stream music. So coming up next, you've got Daniel 6, which also shows how saved he is, because what story is that most people would know it as?
That is Daniel in the Lion's Den.
Right, which happens to come from Daniel 6, which most people would be like,
oh.
yeah.
Yes.
Daniel 6 sounds like a prophetic, scary story, because Daniel be doing a whole lot. Like after Daniel's in the Lion's Den, it's like, oh, I don't want to read the
book of Daniel. The book of Daniel is very.
But most people don't read the rest of the book, so
you should.
You should
read all the books of the Bible.
What's your favorite?
What's my favorite? James.
Because of like the patience and taming the tongue. Because I haven't mastered that yet. So maybe I should go to James a little bit more.
I would say the approach to how
the suffering part, the building of character, endurance, and character and trials. I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you answer the question.
The way he approaches everyone in truth, while also being kind, because that's a direct character trait of God. One thing I've noticed, and not to get super spiritual right now, but I've been fascinated at how just God is and how consistent he is in his justice, but how merciful he is at the same time. That's been a super interesting concept in my mind, because usually you think of justice as just mean when it's going against you, which a lot of the time in the Bible, that's what it's for, because we ought to be like Christ. And being like Christ means not being fleshly. So, yeah. But at the same time, how loving God is and how he will always be there for you when you do mess up. While also not, going back on the fact that, hey, we did sin. But even in our sin, Christ has loved us. So, yeah.
You say you don't want to be spiritual, but you pick James out of all the books. And then you also have a song out of the book of Daniel and call it Daniel 6. And then you pick the first Noel and there's no second Noel. But anyway.
Oh, jeez.
What is your least favorite book of the Bible? Because I have an answer, but that's also.
My least favorite? I don't think I have a least favorite. I would say.
Or what's the hardest book to read? I'll put it that way.
Habakkuk.
Oh, why?
One, because it's one chapter. Two, because in that chapter there's a lot.
There's more than one chapter.
No, what book am I thinking?
I don't know. This was like what?
No, I'm pretty sure.
Habakkuk 2:2 is the vision one, so I know there's more than one.
Oh yeah, what book am I thinking about? I'm gonna look that up. I'm sorry, I should know that.
No, you're fine.
That's what
when you said back, I was like, that's
there's
the one.
a book in the Old Testament closer to the end, as one chapter.
It's a Hosea.
Obadiah. No, is it? My wife has saved me multiple times today, so I'm just gonna go with that.
What happens? I've never read Obadiah, so what happens there? I could. As soon as you said that, I said, I haven't read that one.
Okay, don't quote me because I've been wrong already.
Yeah,
but
Allie, where you going?
It's a story about.
There's a Bible on the. There's a Bible right there.
A master and his servant. His servant gets locked up, meets up with a prophet. The prophet tells the servant to go back to his master and ask for forgiveness. And
that's like that Hagar story.
It is like that.
Like
I really thought that's okay, but that's the story.
We're learning. We're learning together.
We are learning. Look, it's okay to be wrong.
It
I
is
was wrong.
It really is. It really is.
But
I was like, I like her back when he said
yeah,
that. This makes me
whatever that book is, it probably is Obadiah.
That sounds right. Because I've never heard of it before. So.
But yeah,
okay,
yeah, that's the hardest.
I would say.
See, it's the hardest because I don't even know what it is.
There you go. There you go. But as 2 Timothy 3:16 says, all Scripture is given for reproof, rebuke, knowledge, wisdom, doctrine, and correction, which is something that I have to always remember.
Yes.
Are we have an anointed reader? Are you going to read?
Oh, am I reading?
Did you find it? Is that it? It's Kim.
Is Obadiah it? I'm pretty sure.
Obadiah is one book, one chapter.
Okay, Obadiah is one chapter.
Edom's judgment, Edom's sins against Judah, the judgment of the nations, and the future blessing for Israel. It discusses.
When he comes back for the next episode, we'll have
I'll have it right. I promise I'll have it right.
I don't know a thing about Obadiah.
I will have it correct.
I know Hosea married the hoe.
Oh, wow.
So that's one of the ways I remember that. But anyway,
Amen.
Any last words of encouragement or rebuke for creatives?
Study your word. No.
And read those minor prophets.
And read them. Hold on to what God has given you. Again, in the beginning, we talked about how I wanted to quit. There's several times, and our current times where I still want to. But just hold on to what God has given you. Obviously, the gift you have, God has given to you for a reason. So hold on to it. Keep studying. Get closer to God. Get to know God personally. Not just somebody who just gives you things when you need it or when you want it. Get to know the person of God and watch him do great things for you.
That's it. Go stream his single. Follow him on Instagram at Cleandré. He posts once every blue moon, but he is consistently more frequent than his wife with posting. So just, I don't know, pray for me and my tongue and the things that just come out randomly.
Oh, my gosh.
But yeah, love you guys, and hope to see you soon. And next time you'll hear me talk about Carols for a Cause. So yeah.